And welcome another edition of the Corvive College Coaches Corner. Every week on Thursday, we take some time talking college baseball, all levels, all divisions. Today, we're going to talk really exciting, storied baseball program, Notre Dame University. Ryan Munger, the assistant coach, but recruiting coordinator, previously at Davidson, now at Notre Dame. And Ryan, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate it. I know it's a busy time of the year around the holidays, so I appreciate you carving out some time for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something I'm really looking forward to. And then obviously for those that may only see Notre Dame during football season, there's a lot more to Notre Dame than just college Saturdays. But let's talk a little bit about the campus and what makes it such a special place to be a potential student, at Notre Dame.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think the big thing that Notre Dame really tries to pride itself on is just its sense of community. One of the big things when you leave Notre Dame is people just talk about the alumni network and just how far it stretches, and a big part of creating that network is their sense of community while you're on campus. You still have to live on campus for 3 years. There's no real roads to drive through campus. Like, you can drive around campus, but for the most part, while you're on campus, you're actually walking to and from, and people are getting a chance to know each other. And it's unique because it has a little bit of that big school feel to it because of some of the college football Saturday atmospheres. But it's going to be 13,000 students, and that's including grad students. So you're still in a situation where you get to know everybody. So I think that's just a big piece of it, and even just comes down to the design of the buildings. Notre Dame spends all of its money on community spaces just to try to force people okay, everybody wants to go to where the nice areas are. So they put all the money in the community spaces, and they just make it really, really easy for people to interact and kind of get to know each other.
One of the great things about Notre Dame, and because in today's world, a lot of parents feel like you can't be a multi-sport athlete. And one of the dynamics to Notre Dame is arguably two of its most elite graduates, Jeff Samardzija, who, oh, by the way, played football and could have been a high-level draft pick, and Pat Connaughton, who was a heck of a basketball player, still in the NBA, but he was a heck of a pitcher at Notre Dame. So Notre Dame really is one of those schools where, you're not, when you're out recruiting, how do you look at and evaluate those multi-sport athletes that may be coming out of football or basketball or hockey? Is that something you look for in a future recruit?
So one, I'm going to add Cole Kmet, tight end for the Bears. He was a big one too. Golden Tate, who he obviously made his name in football, but he was a pretty good baseball player where I was at it too. But Pat Connaughton's the one that's probably the most interesting to me because he was a 4th round pick from baseball. Decided he's I still want to give this basketball thing a shot. Ended up being a 2nd round pick in the NBA, and then he won himself a ring. So pretty cool. He actually came back to campus last year and talked to the guys, and he was a really cool dude just to be around. But to get back to your actual question, I think it's hard to overvalue guys who play multiple sports, and it comes from a couple different levels. If you're getting recruited to play college baseball, traditionally that's probably going to be your best sport. Yes, you have to be athletic enough to play another sport, but I think the other thing is you have to learn how to really compete, because again, if that's not your best sport and you're still trying to carve out a path for yourself to play in that other sport, you have to lean into some other things rather than just being really talented. And so I think those are all traits that serve guys well, because everybody's heard, once you get to college baseball, now you're in a locker room full of, best players. And so now it's hard to sit there and say, oh, I know for sure I'm the best player on the team, like most guys did when they're in high school. I told somebody this the other day, but I was looking at our 27 recruiting class, and I didn't know this at the time because it just kind of happened organically. But all of our position players in that class play another sport other than baseball. And so it's just, several of the pitchers do as well. And it's just kind of one of those things that organically happen. And I think we just kind of gravitate a little bit towards those type of guys.
One of the great things about Notre Dame, when you look at your roster for the 2025-2026 season, I think I counted anywhere from 15 to 17 states that were represented. I mean, obviously, this is not just in Indiana. It's not just in the Midwest. I mean, you have everybody from left coast to right coast and everybody in between. Talk a little bit about your recruiting as a recruiting coordinator. Obviously, that keeps you busy, but how do you kind of find your way to most of the athletes that catch your eye? Is it camps? Is it tournaments? How does that begin?
Yeah, so it first starts with us, like, when we got to Notre Dame 4 years ago, it was trying to understand, where does our brand do the best? Wherever you are, your brand will always do your best in your home state. So the Midwest, Indiana was a good place for us to start. And then as we kept learning more about Notre Dame and understanding our alumni network, it very clearly kind of became to us, okay, we got to make sure we hit SoCal, and then we got to hit kind of that Northeast, New England, New Jersey type of areas out there, and just the Notre Dame brand seems to do extremely well out there. Now, that's not to say we won't go into Florida or Texas. Again, we'll go wherever the good players are, but I think where we're going to spend the most time is trying to make sure we kind of hit those three pockets throughout the country and then go from there. Where and when, the recruiting timelines kind of kept changing over the past couple of years. I think under the current model, now it's, if we can get some guys to camps while they're freshmen and sophomore and just start to build some of that relationship with them, I think that goes a long way, because, once you are able to start being recruited, once your junior year hits, everything seems to happen really, really fast. And, it's not to say there's anything wrong with it. That's just the current model. So I think for us, if we can get guys to come to Notre Dame, at some point, hey, it's a nice touch, you're showing your interest. But I think the big thing for us is like, all right, can we actually start to build a relationship, with that person and his family? And can they get a chance to know us? And I think, and again, usually a lot of times at our camps, they get to know our players and they get to start picking their brains and a little bit more insight into what it's like to be a Notre Dame baseball player. And so, that's a good place to start. It's nothing's ever changed in this, but it's connections, right? Like, we got to make sure we're calling coaches, summer high school coaches, and hear who that's good right now and who's kind of coming through the pipes, and make sure we're kind of aware. We've got a Google sheet, and we try to keep track of, as many players as we can. And, then once it's time for us to start watching guys, we're going to be at as many different events as possible throughout the country, and, do everything we can to see as many good players who are interested in Notre Dame.
One of the dynamics for you as a coach is that you were a student athlete at a school like Duke, then you're a grad assistant, and you're working your way up through Davidson, and now at Notre Dame. So one of the biggest things that screams is academics. And I think a lot of parents or student athletes sometimes get intimidated, like, oh boy, that school might be too hard, going there and trying to play baseball. But talk a little bit about the support staff that student athletes have, particularly at Notre Dame, that kind of keep everything in check and kind of help them balance the challenges both in the classroom and on the ball field.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame's a huge proponent of the idea of being a student athlete still. And because of that, they feel like they have more safety nets than anybody to, protect and enhance the student athlete's experience while they're at Notre Dame. They don't want anybody coming just to be an athlete, while they're at Notre Dame. That goes for the quarterback, the shortstop, the point guard. All the best players still are student athletes while they're here at Notre Dame. And, for us, it starts a lot of times we'll be able to bring some of our guys in early for a summer bridge session. And, Coach Stifler jokes about a lot. He's like, it's Notre Dame on training wheels, kind of gets you eased into it, knock out some classes. You start getting used to the lifting phase. But a lot of it is you really start learning how to build relationships with your professors, and you build a lot of relationships with our academic support team. And so, our guys they've got 2 academic advisors, and, they get to spend plenty of time with them. And I think they do a lot to make sure the resources are taken care of as far as the writing center. And, you're learning how to write college papers, and you're learning how to cite all your sources. You're learning how to work around and use ChatGPT, what you can and can't use, and all those things. So I think there's just a ton of education, and there's a ton of resources that goes into, allowing the Notre Dame student to, thrive while they're here. And again, part of it is, is they do try to weed some of it out on the front end, right? You know, it's not like you can show up to Notre Dame with a 2.6 GPA. Like you
Right.
do, you do need to challenge yourself with rigor and AP courses, and they want to see you do well and push yourself. But that's not to say they're going to be scared off if you get a B or something like that. Like there's plenty of guys who have actually come to Notre Dame and they've graduated with a higher GPA from Notre Dame than they did their high school. And that's not to say their high school is harder than Notre Dame. I think that's just something to say, like once they got to Notre Dame, some of our resources, our support staff, they really kind of showed some of the guys like, hey, here's what some of your study habits need to look like. Here's how you need to take care of business and X, Y, and Z. And, the other thing too is they started spending some time around other Notre Dame students, and that just kind of raises their floor a little bit. And they really push themselves and understand how to thrive in the classroom.
A lot of families, especially over the last few months, we hear a lot about, lifting and strength programs and Omaha challenges and things like that. But I would love for you to walk us through in season, let's call it middle of February, the bell rings, and you're hopefully going into June in that city that begins with a O. Talk a little bit about what does a day in the life of a Notre Dame baseball player look like during the season? I mean, most parents think it's equivalent to the high school schedule, but really it's anything but that.
For us, we're going to lift a couple times throughout the week. And the big thing you got to work around too is like the travel. There's a lot of games going on. And so I think the time management piece that comes into play for a lot of our student athletes is probably the biggest thing. Everybody's used to working hard in high school. They're used to, lift, they're used to practice, but they're not used to just the sheer volume that comes with it while they're being on their own and making sure they've got to eat and all those kinds of things. So, for us, standard week is, you play on the weekends, right? Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. For us, either Mondays or Wednesdays or our off days, it just depends a little bit on our travel days. When we can, we like to still go on Mondays. For us, it's a little bit more of like our active recovery type days. For guys who are playing a lot, it's, hey, let's get our ground balls in, let's get our swings in, and maybe it's a light and prep for Tuesday. And then we got to do a good job of just taking care of their bodies. And then for some of our guys who aren't playing as much right now, then they're getting a lot more volume and they're getting a lot of their work thrown at them. And they might be doing a little bit of a heavier, more aggressive lift. And then, like I said, then we're back at it on Tuesday. And then Wednesday, we try to just give them a full, hey, shutdown day. A lot of times they're able to go get some extra work in the training room, massages, rehab, anything they might have just to make sure they're building their body back up. And the other thing too is we want to make sure they have plenty of time to go meet with professors, go meet with academic support, stay on top of their grades, and everything's trending in the right direction there. And then Thursday will be a good practice day, and then travel, and then we're back at it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then usually during that week, it's at least 2 lifts, Monday and Thursday, or Monday and Wednesday. Again, there's a little bit of flexibility that goes within it, but it all happens quick, and it all comes at you, in a heavy amount of volume.
It is the heavy load with regard to the first year of learning how to be a college student athlete. And on that note, I would love for you to be with so many changes, so many families, athletes feel like they're being penalized, the portal, name, image, and likeness. And so if you could, because you have the perspective as a former student athlete, not that long ago, the world has changed for the younger guys, but it's not like they've disappeared. So if you could give athletes that really have a strong desire to attend Notre Dame, and let's say they're freshmen in high school, sophomores in high school, they really want to make sure they're ready when the bell rings on August 1st of their rising junior year, what can they do to really be prepared to catch your eye at possibly a Notre Dame camp or a tournament?
Couple different things, right? I mean, there's always going to be that baseline of velocity or bat speed or foot speed. You do have to show some of those things. I think if you're looking for a couple of like, simple things that we want to see you guys do, right? I think for hitters, it's going to be, can you control the strike zone as a hitter? And like, what are your bat to ball skills like? And then do you have the prerequisite strength for the ball to jump through the gap when you actually do barrel it? And, the reason we kind of think about that is the strike zone, it only gets harder to control when you get to college, right? The velocity ticks up, the breaking balls improve. Now that there's more situational guys, and so there's just way more stuff you have to be able to handle. The bat the ball piece I mentioned, the swing and miss. To be honest with you, I stole that from a couple of my buddies in professional baseball, but whiff has kind of become one of the new predictors of, which guys are going to be able to hit and which guys won't. Because if you're just limiting how many times you're putting the ball into play, it's going to be a tough way to live. And then again, like I said, strength in the hands. Sounds very simple, but whether you're 5'10" or you're 6'5", at the end of the day, we just want to make sure our guys are able to maximize the strength of their frame and how hard they can hit the ball, right? Like that doesn't mean everybody's got to be able to hit the ball out of the park, but can you maximize what your frame is doing and the strength that you have at the time? Because again, typically guys still can grow, they can get stronger, but again, are you able to maximize what your body's capable of doing at that time? And on the pitching side of things, it'll sound simple, but can you pitch inside of the strike zone with two different pitches and potentially show a third? I think everything starts there for us. And then it's, what does the frame look like? How does the arm work? Where's the velocity right now? What are the shapes that you can create with your off speed? But if you can't pitch inside of the strike zone with two pitches, it's really, really hard for us to sit here and say, hey, it's going to be a good fit.
One of the little tidbits you just threw out there, I think really flies under the radar. A lot of times when we talk strength and everybody starts thinking about heavy weights and grueling sessions, you mentioned hand strength and the grip strength. I don't think we talk about that enough, both from a pitching perspective, by the way, as well as a hitting perspective. Mm-hmm. But talk a little bit about hand strength. So when you're that 5'8", 5'11" hitter, that can be a separator. If you have really good hand strength, grip strength, that's definitely going to show itself with the barrel. And the other piece to that is the swing and miss. So many times we talk batting average, we talk about exit velocity, but if you're swinging and missing a lot, the exit velocity really isn't relative because you're not barreling up enough balls. So can you talk about the two and how they kind of coexist together with regard to becoming a strong student athlete at the college level?
100%. So grip strength is something we actually test weekly with our guys. And so it's, we've kind of got our grip strength leaderboards, and the guys kind of know which ones are the strongest. And I would say there's a little bit of more of that alpha mentality about who's got the strongest grip strength than there is the strongest bench press. But there's a direct correlation between grip strength and bat speed. And again, the greater your bat speed, the greater ability you have to impact baseball and hit the ball hard with more consistency. So I think that's a big piece to come into play. And, the way we train it, we've got several, grip things, and anything heavy we can put in our hand, we can. But I think sometimes, when guys are training, you'll use machines or whatnot. And again, those can all be great from a sports specific side of things. But when you can put heavy things in your hand and just hold on to it for a while, it's really important, whether it's farmer's carries, plate holds, whatever you want to do. That's definitely a big piece of it. I joke with our guys. I was like, when y'all go home, if you don't have something, just hold bricks in your hands. I was like, if you've ever shaken a stonemason's hand, those guys will break your hands because they got such strong hands.
So true.
So I'm just like, just while you're sitting there at home and you're watching TV and there's a commercial, just hold a brick for the whole commercial, see what happens. I guarantee your hands will come back stronger. And then the bat to ball piece is, the interesting thing is that there's more information on high school players now than there used to be. And so you're able to see on more guys, and again, not the same amount of data you have on college guys, but you're able to look at, how much they're striking out during summer ball. What some guys have enough information where you can look at their chase and their whiff percentage. And that helps us make, more educated decisions in the recruiting process. And, it's just, it is a little bit of a red flag when you see guys swing and miss a ton at a game. I would much rather see a guy go 0 for, right, and not get a hit, but it's like, all right, he put together good at bats. Like, he just wasn't on the barrel that day. Like, that's going to happen. But, hey, sometimes guys are like, oh, I should get recruited. Like, I went 1 for 4 with a home run or something like that. Like, yeah, you ran into one, but you also swung and missed a bunch in your other 3 at bats. And so, the in-game results are not always created equal. And so I think that's sometimes like players are so like, ooh, I went 2 for 3 in front of coach today with a walk. Like I'm going to get an offer. You might, I don't know, like how it went into play. What arm were you facing? Right. Like what was his stuff actually challenging you or not really? And so I think, it's sometimes you just have to sit there and think, okay, what is the coach looking for? Is he looking at the process of how you played, or is he looking at the results of how you played? And I would tell you, most coaches are sitting there looking at how the process of how you played came about.
This question I'm just going to sneak in. I wasn't going to ask it, but you had mentioned when you were looking at pitchers being able to throw 2 pitches in the zone for strikes and, hopefully a third. We hear so much about spin rates, horizontal, vertical breaks, and velocity and all this kind of stuff. I am a huge believer and proponent of young athletes learning a changeup. I feel like we don't talk enough about deceleration. I think the whole world with regard to pitching facilities and it's all velo doctor and velo this but at the same time, what nobody's saying, and I would love to hear your perspective, is that, hey man, some of the good hitters, they'll turn velo around. Velo's not the issue. It's can you step on the gas pedal, step on the brake, decelerate. Talk a little bit about at the college level, particularly like the ACC, or when you're out of conference, you're playing some of these bigger teams. Being able to decelerate in a bases loaded or a stress inning is really a separator to becoming an elite pitcher.
100%. I'm going to steal Coach Volt's, our pitching coach's language a little bit here, but for him, just the idea of being unpredictable is so important, right? I was a terrible hitter in my career, but when I knew a pitch was coming, then I could at least turn into an average hitter. So, for him, the idea of when he's calling pitches, like if guys can show 2 pitches consistently with a third in the zone, as a hitter, it just makes things so much harder. In the fall, a lot of times our freshmen are kind of going through the ringer because they're getting a 2-0 breaking ball and they're like, what is this? I'm like, yeah, welcome to college, man. Like they're not going to groove you a 2-0 fastball just because. So I think those are all, really important things. And, the changeup, when you get to college, when you face arms with a good changeup, everybody's like, ooh, it's going to be a tough day, because that's probably the toughest pitch to hit. But it's hard because so often in high school, coaches and pitchers are terrified to call a changeup because a lot of times you'll speed up a high school hitter's bat speed.
Right.
And so then you don't throw it enough, and then all of a sudden you haven't developed that pitch. We've got a freshman this year that I expect to be a weekend starter for us. And part of the reason is he's coming in, and yes, he's left-handed and it's 91, 94 and it's real stuff, but like it's a plus changeup that he can throw whenever he wants to, right on left or left on left. And so for him, like those are traits that make him unique. And I think, again, there's plenty that goes into it, but having that ability to throw a changeup or even just a breaking ball for a strike when you need to, that goes a long way, and that can really elevate, just your pitchability and your way to get hitters out.
Final question, Ryan, and that is, there's a lot of student athletes that, obviously dream about playing baseball at Notre Dame. Do you prefer that they attend a camp at the younger ages, at the freshman, sophomore, or even 8th grade for that matter, so that they can get a feel of the campus, the coaching staff, and then you can track progression? Or would you prefer that they be older and, showing a skill set that might capture your attention?
Yeah, it's hard to say there's one path that works for all. We've committed some guys who have come later to camps, and, they kind of opened our eyes when we saw them, because again, they were at first we were like, we hemmed and hawed on them. Then they came to camp and we got to spend more time around them. That we were just like, hey, what are we thinking? We got to take this guy. And then there were other situations where I think getting some guys to camp earlier that allowed us to make sure come August 1st, we were on the phone with them and they were a priority for us. So, we've definitely had success stories with both types. Excuse me. But I think, again, for some of the younger guys, I think it is worth them knowing, like, we do place value in that. And, hey, you don't have to necessarily come light the world on fire as a freshman or as a sophomore, but come put your name in front of us, show what you can do, start to build a relationship with us, start to get to know Notre Dame a little bit, and see if it might actually be a school that you like or you not like. I can't sit here and say, hey, Notre Dame's the right fit for everybody, but it is a really good opportunity. And it's a really good place for people to investigate and see if it might be the right fit for them.
Well, I want to let everyone know that we're going to have all of Coach Munger's contact information, social media. We'll put links to the baseball program at Notre Dame so that you'll be able to reach out, follow, send a DM, anything like that. Ryan, I want to say thank you very much. Merry Christmas. I know it's a busy time of year. I don't know if you're going to be in Columbus, but hopefully we can catch up a little bit if you are there. If not, I really wish you guys a great, successful season in 2026 and beyond.
Well, sounds like a plan. I appreciate you again for having us on, and have a Merry Christmas. And as always, go Irish.
That was awesome.
Athletes, electrolytes matter, but you got to choose the right electrolytes. If you look at the sugars, 34 grams, the dyes, all the things that's not good for you in this product, this is a hot product. If you look here at the electrolytes made by Beede, it's got the right amount of magnesium, sodium, potassium, zinc, kosher salt. It's got vitamin C to help with the immune system. I'm telling you, if you want to stay on the field, you want to perform at your best, you want to recover well, this is the product that you need to choose to fuel your body as an athlete.